Welcome, everybody. My name is Jim Chilson. I'm Director of Communications for the Citizens Utility Board. We're just going to give it a few minutes before we get started so that people have time to get on. Just doing a periodic welcome to everybody who's joining us. Welcome to CUB's very first members-only event of 2024. We've got a great topic tonight, all about heat pumps. This is ripped from the headlines. It's getting a lot of news lately. For the second consecutive year, heat pumps have outsold gas furnaces in the United States. So this is a cutting-edge topic. This event, we're going to get started very quickly. We've got a great guest tonight. But before I do, I just want to say that the whole reason we hold these events is just to say thank you to our members. You make events like this possible. You make all of the services that we offer people possible. We go across the state holding free events to show people how to cut their bills. We have a consumer hotline that spends all day answering calls from sometimes very, very frustrated people about their utility bills. And I've seen that team, the Consumer Advocacy Department, save people hundreds of dollars. And of course, we have a legal team and a policy team that are fighting the good fight at the Illinois Commerce Commission and down in Springfield to try to protect consumers from bad bills that the utilities are pushing, and also to fight rate hikes and to pass good policy like we did back in 2021 when we helped pass the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. Now, there is, we just got recently a person who called our, oh, it's very nice. Somebody just gave a message. Thank you for all you do on our behalf. You're welcome. It's an honor. I've got a great job. I work with great people. The other day, somebody sent us a message and said that CUB's Consumer Advocacy Department got him out of a bad electric and gas alternative supplier deal and saved him 30% on his utility bills. And he called CUB a hidden gem. So thank you so much. I know times can be tough. Our budgets are tight. We just so appreciate all of the support you give us. So thank you very much. Okay, so tonight, let's get started. This is all about electric heat pumps. I want to thank Yvonne Requa. She is our outreach director. She is taking time out of her night with her beautiful family to run the behind the scenes tech. And I want to introduce you to our special guest tonight. Her name is Joey Lee. She joined the CUB team in 2023 after earning her master's in public policy from UIC. Her undergrad, and I just learned this today, it's fascinating, was with the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. And I always think that consumer advocates are artists at heart, so that fits Joey. So Joey builds grassroots support for building decarbonization. She's an on-the-ground organizer. Her favorite part about the role is doing exactly what she's going to do tonight, is engaging directly with people and helping them develop accessible tools and resources to help demystify decarbonization. I like that term, demystify decarbonization. So Joey, welcome. Thank you for gracing us with your presence tonight. And I'm going to let you get started with all about electric heat pumps. Oh, one more thing. Sorry, Joey. If you have questions tonight, please put them in the chat. If we can't answer them during the talk, at the end, we're going to have a Q&A, and we're going to be able to answer all those questions. So if you have any questions, just put them in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. Okay, Joey, go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction, Jim. And let me just share my screen with you guys. Okay. Jim, can you confirm that you can see that on your end? Okay, perfect. It's weird not being able to see all of you, but I assume you were out there in your homes. And thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are going to be talking all about heat pumps. I'm just going to get right to it. So did you know that we are burning fossil fuels inside of our homes? I think when people oftentimes think about burning fossil fuels, people think about maybe a power plant or the tailpipe of a diesel car, but most people don't really think about our homes where we spend so much of our time. There are four main ways that we burn fossil fuels in our homes. They are for space heating, for water heating, for cooking, and for clothes drying. The big culprit here is going to be space heating. Nearly 80% of Illinois residents rely on natural gas to heat their home. So you can see how you might be able to lower your carbon footprint or lower your emissions inside of your home by switching over to a heat pump or electrifying. So you might have heard about the term building decarbonization. I think that this is a term that we often use and hear when we talk about heat pumps, but what does it really mean? Building decarbonization really simply just means that we are ensuring that the energy we use to power and heat our buildings doesn't result in further greenhouse gas emissions. This is obviously important because a huge part of our emissions come from buildings. Roughly 2/3 of the state's emissions come from buildings. So it's a really important sector to tackle when it comes to reducing our emissions. One way that we can work towards decarbonization is through electrifying our homes. This obviously isn't a foolproof way, especially since our electricity generation isn't clean yet. Hopefully we're working on it, we're gonna get there. But there are pieces of legislation in Illinois, like Jim mentioned, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, that put Illinois on the path to having a carbon-free power sector. Okay. And why might you be thinking about decarbonizing or electrifying? There are so many reasons why folks might be interested in doing this, but the three main ones are going to be for affordability, for climate change, and for health and indoor air quality. We are going to be digging a little bit deeper into all of these in a minute, fear not, starting with affordability. So gas is expensive. Not only the gas that we're using and burning inside of our homes, but the gas system itself is incredibly expensive. We have some of the highest fixed fees in the Midwest here in Illinois, and that's the amount that you're paying regardless of how much gas you're using. Additionally, gas companies across the state last year filed and received record rate hikes. As you can see on the screen, Illinois gas utilities tried to raise rates by more than $900 million. That is a very large amount of money. CUB and a lot of other organizations across the state fought back, and we were able to curb some of that spending. But they still got these really exorbitant rate hikes. And this just goes to show that not only the gas, like I just said, the gas that we use is expensive, but the system itself is an old one, and that infrastructure is very expensive to maintain and upkeep. Gas as a commodity is also expensive. And it's also historically a more volatile market than electricity. I think this is something that we've all felt in winters past, right? Where suddenly the price skyrockets and then you can feel the difference in your bill, right? So I don't know if you can see, I know these numbers are small on your screen, but this chart goes back all the way to 1967. So you can see that electricity prices generally are going to be much more stable. Another reason that folks are excited around electrification and heat pumps is for climate change. Natural gas is made up of predominantly methane, which has an incredible global warming potential. Methane has 84 times the global warming potential over CO2 over a 20-year time period. And because, like we talked about, the building sector accounts for such a significant portion of emissions in the state, tackling the building sector is going to be really critical to tackling climate change. And third, but certainly not least, the reason to decarbonize and to electrify is for cleaner air and indoor air quality. Gas burning appliances emit pollutants directly into your air. These are things like nitrogen oxide, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, formaldehyde, and benzene. Those are some pretty scary chemicals. And these are especially impactful for children. That makes sense, right? Their bodies are smaller, they're spending a lot of time indoors, and 21% of childhood asthma cases in Illinois are attributable to gas stove usage. But it is not all doom and gloom. Again, there are four main ways that we burn fossil fuels inside of our homes, and they are for space heating, for water heating, for clothes drying, and for cooking. And on this slide, you can see what their electric counterparts look like, right? So these are technologies that are available on the market right now, and they look quite similar to our gas appliances that we're used to. So this just goes to show that we do have the technology to move beyond gas. And yeah, we will be talking a little bit about heat pumps, or actually a lot about heat pumps. But the 4 other technologies, we don't really have time to go over, but they work very similarly. A lot of them have heat pump in their name. So you'll get a general understanding for how these different appliances work. Okay, heat pumps. So I want to talk more generally about heat pumps, and then we'll go over the 2 types of heat pumps, or the 2 major types of heat pumps, called air source and ground source, also called geothermal. But generally, to speak about heat pumps, instead of burning a fuel to create heat, a heat pump simply moves heat from one location, the source, to another location. There are 2 types of heat pumps, ground source and air source, and they both work similarly. The major difference is going to be where that heat is being drawn from, either from the ground or the air, like the name of the technology implies. There are already other technologies inside of our homes right now that utilize the same type of technology to move heat around. And that's going to be things like a refrigerator or a window air conditioning unit. Those are all using the same kind of technology. Heat pumps can also switch really easily between heating and cooling. It's really as simple as flipping a switch. So it would replace both your furnace and your air conditioning unit. So if you are thinking, oh, I know that both of those appliances are kind of at the end of their lifespan, now is the time to start thinking about what those replacements might look like. Both air source and ground source heat pumps are going to be best suited for folks who live in homes with forced air systems and have existing ductwork. It's not impossible without those things. It's definitely doable, but I think that these technologies are best suited for those kinds of homes. There are air to water heat pumps for things like radiator heating or ductless systems as well, if your home doesn't already have existing ductwork. Okay, so let's get into air source heat pumps. So what you're seeing on the screen is an air source heat pump, meaning that heat is just being moved from the outside air to the inside air and vice versa. In the US, we often measure the efficiency of our heating equipment through something called SEER, SEER, all caps. It stands for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Rating. So generally, the higher a SEER rating, the more efficient a technology is going to be. When we talk about high efficiency gas furnaces, we're talking about a SEER number of around 16. Many heat pumps have a SEER rating over 30. So this is just one way to measure efficiency, but I just want to demonstrate to you how incredibly efficient these technologies are, especially compared to their gas counterparts. Heat pump technology has also come a very long way in recent years, and there's now an entire category of heat pumps specifically designed for cold climates. And there now are heat pumps on the market that can accommodate temperatures well below 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Of course, unfortunately, these are going to be more expensive. But I do want to mention that they will lose efficiency as the temperature gets colder. And we're going to talk about energy efficiency in a bit, but that's why it's going to be so important for your home to be well insulated and have a good building envelope. That's going to ensure that your heat pump doesn't have to work as hard in the cold weather to keep your home comfortable. If you are really interested in this technology and you're considering getting a heat pump, we would definitely recommend or almost require getting a cold weather heat pump with a very high SEER rating. Okay, let's move on to geothermal. So this is the second type of heat pump, sometimes called geothermal, sometimes called ground source heat pumps, and they move heating from the ground into your home. So this is contrary to the air source that we just talked about that's drawing heating from the outside air. This is actually drawing heating from the ground. This is done by digging these holes called boreholes that hundreds of feet into the ground, laying down piping, and then having a refrigerant that moves through the ground. The ground is going to be a great source for energy because once you get a few hundred feet down, the Earth's temperature is really stable year round, sits around 50 degrees. And because the source of the heating is the same year round, your geothermal heat pump won't lose efficiency as the above ground temperature changes. So this is going to be a far more efficient and superior option when compared to air source heat pumps. I recently read a stat from the EPA that said that ground source heat pumps can reduce energy consumption and corresponding emissions up to 44% compared to air source heat pumps. So you can see that that's a really big portion of your bill and your emissions that you'll be able to cut by going geothermal. As you might imagine, this is a much more intensive install process than the air source heat pump. You're digging these gigantic holes into the ground, which is going to drive up the upfront cost. We find that this cost is going to be the main barrier for folks interested in getting one of these systems, but we'll get a little bit more into how to finance these projects later on. Another difference between air source and ground source is where the system is placed. So you can see how for geothermal, since everything is underground, there's no structure outside of your home. That creates like a much cleaner look, but obviously, again, like I said, it's going to be more expensive. And with both of these technologies and appliances, you can see how seamlessly they might work with other renewable energy projects. For example, if you had solar on your home, you would significantly be able to lower your bill usage by generating some of your own electricity. So these work really well in tandem with some other projects that you might be thinking about or already have in your home. Okay, we cannot talk about building decarbonization or about heat pumps without also talking about energy efficiency. And that is because the cheapest and the cleanest energy is simply the energy that we don't use. As we work towards electrifying our buildings, energy efficiency is going to be so critical to ensure that we're using less electricity to begin with, to ensure that our appliances are able to run more efficiently and ultimately benefit our wallets and the environment. There are things that you can do right now, even without a big upfront investment like a heat pump, to improve your energy efficiency. This is things like weatherizing, using energy efficient lighting, unplugging appliances, and utilizing your programmable thermostat. Another way to ensure that your home is energy efficient is to get a home energy audit. This is going to be something we really highly recommend if you're interested in getting a heat pump. This is going to be a thorough assessment of your home to understand where you're losing the most energy. A professional will walk through your home, look at your insulation, your ducts, all your rooms, your windows, the direction of the sun in your home, and all of these things, and provide you with a really detailed report. The Department of Energy has a database of contractors that provide home energy audits. And if you're interested in getting this service, that is the place to start. So this is just an example of a home energy audit report that I found online, but this will just give you a sense of what you'll walk out from the audit with. So in this home, you can identify that most of the energy loss is coming from duct leakage and walls. It will help you identify upgrades needed to make your home more efficient, like we talked about, and this is going to be super important. If you're interested in getting a heat pump, you'll also eventually need something called a load calculation. I've often heard of load calculations happening kind of tacked onto a home energy audit. So that might be something to keep in mind if you're interested in getting a home energy audit and a heat pump. Load calculation is sometimes also called a manual J calculation. I know it sounds complicated, but really simply, it just is a contractor coming into your home again, taking into account things like the square footage of your home, your insulation, and determining the size of the HVAC equipment that you need. Properly sizing your equipment is going to be really important. Oversizing doesn't necessarily mean that your system will run more efficiently or really has no other benefit to you. It will, however, make your home or your system more expensive. So right sizing your system is going to be really important, and a manual J or a load calculation is a big part of that. Okay. Now into the rebates and the tax credits. So This is a lot of information, but don't worry, you'll get the slides afterwards, so you'll be able to access it. But this is for the IRA, or the Inflation Reduction Act, which was passed in 2022. It is a very large investment to tackle the climate crisis and to invest in clean energy across the country. These incentives, along with state incentives and other programs, is going to make these next few years one of the best times to make energy and efficiency improvements to your home. There are so many, literally so many parts of the IRA, but these are going to be the primary consumer facing ones. You can see that they largely come in two groups, which I've color coded for you. Green, which is going to be the tax credits, and blue, which is going to be rebates. We're going to go over in detail a little bit more about the ones that have little electric bolts next to them. But before we do that, I do want to highlight some differences between the tax credit program and the rebate programs that you should note. The first is going to be how you access that incentive. Tax credits are where you are spending the money up front. You keep all your receipts, and come the spring, you file an additional form with your taxes. With the rebates, they are really going to operate more like a coupon. So they should be implemented in a way that is point of sale. So you should be able to walk into a store like a Home Depot or an Apt, buy the appliance, and take advantage of the rebate on the spot. They also differ in terms of budget. So as you can see in the rightmost column, tax credits do not have a total program budget. So it's completely up to how much people take advantage of them and utilize them. On the other hand, the rebate programs have predetermined budgets. So that means that once the money starts rolling and the budget gets spent, that is the end of the program. Hopefully we'll pass something else like this, but that will kind of be the end of the IRA program. Another difference is that tax credits are available now. They are completely kind of handled through your taxes and the federal government. So those are available now. But rebate programs are going to be implemented by state offices, and we don't exactly know what that will look like yet. We're likely going to see them, if we're being optimistic, late this year. And if the process ends up taking a little longer, maybe even next year. Last I checked, the state of Illinois had not yet filed an application for the rebate program. So we're a little bit ways away from implementation of these rebate programs.
Hey, Joey. Sorry to interrupt. Just a real quick. Everybody, I know there's a lot of good comments that people are making. We're gonna touch on these toward the end of the talk, but I just want to say Jean spoke up here and said, note that tax credits depend on income levels in terms of how much you may realize if low income.
What is that?
So I think what Jean is saying, she's noting that the tax credits depend on income levels. Is that correct?
I don't think that's the case. Tax credits should be a majority of these tax credits. So the EV tax credits and the EV tax credits, the EV charging credits are income qualified, but the electrification and efficiency tax credit, as well as the clean energy tax credit, is available to anybody who owes taxes.
She adds, if you don't have a high enough income, you won't be able to deduct the amounts.
Interesting. I'm not exactly sure how that works.
Jean, I will give you my email address. I'll put it in the chat toward the end, and you can reach out to me tomorrow. We can flesh this out. No problem. Go ahead, Joey. Sorry.
Yes, and also please let me know, because I would love to know exactly how that works if you don't if your return is not enough to. Okay, cool. We're just about to talk about income qualified programs, so this is perfect. Another thing to note is that the target population and the income qualifications. So some of the programs are income qualified, like the EV ones and the electrification and appliance rebate. So these are going to be programs that are geared towards low and moderate income folks, versus some of the tax credits that are available to anybody who pays taxes. Okay, so we're going to talk about 3 of the programs through the IRA, and the first is going to be the Home Energy Efficiency and Weatherization Tax Credit. So this started in January of 2023, and for the next decade, all consumers can claim a tax credit for 30% of the cost of qualified projects for up to $1,200 a year. That means that you can claim the maximum annual credit every year that you make eligible improvements up until 2033. So this is up to $150 for a home energy audit, which we just talked about, up to $500 for efficient exterior doors, up to $600 for efficient exterior windows or skylights, and up to $600 for qualifying central AC, electrical panel upgrades, which you might need if you're planning on electrifying, and water heaters and water boilers. There is also an additional one-time $2,000 tax credit for upgrading a space or a water heater that does not count towards your annual $1,200 cap. So this could be for a heat pump or a heat pump water heater. So that means that for 1 year, you would be eligible for $3,200. And then for every following year, you would be eligible for a tax credit cap of $1,200. There are more specific requirements for each of these line items. So definitely go on the IRS website and look at the requirements before you go and spend your money. For example, your materials might need to read to meet Energy Star requirements. And then some credits cover the cost of labor while others do not. And another thing I want to know is that the home has to be your primary residence. So you couldn't, for example, claim the credit on, for example, a rental property. Again, energy efficiency is going to be so important as we electrify and get heat pumps. If people's homes are poorly insulated and sealed, even with how efficient these technologies are, your bills might go up more than you're expecting, which is exactly what we want to avoid. Energy efficiency maybe is less exciting work, but it's really important that people understand the need for it and take advantage of these tax credits. Okay, then next we have the residential clean energy tax credit. So this also started in January 2023, and for the next decade, all consumers can claim a tax credit for 30% of the cost of qualified projects. And once we hit 2023, for the next few years, they will be scaling down the program. So this could include something like solar panels, or solar electric panels, or solar water panels. Solar panels could also qualify for state incentives, like the SREC program. So you're able to stack different incentives to kind of get the biggest bang for your buck, I guess. This would also include the geothermal heat pumps that we just talked about and battery storage. Again, this home has to be your primary residence, and this applies to new and existing homes.
Hey, Joey, can I ask, Richard had a question about the tax credits. He said, are they for installation costs, not for ongoing costs, correct?
Uh-huh.
Yep. There you go, Richard.
Yes. Okay. Electrification and appliance rebates. So the Inflation Reduction Act has money set aside to help low and moderate income Illinoisans transition away from natural gas. And as part of this, we have this rebate program. So these rebates are being implemented by states, so we don't exactly know what they will look like yet, and we're still waiting for more information on how they will be implemented, but stay tuned. Once we have more information, we will definitely be sharing that with you. Again, these are supposed to be point of sale rebates, and it includes up to $840 for an electric stove or clothes dryer, up to $1,600 for insulation, air sealing, and ventilation, up to $1,750 for a heat pump water heater, up to $2,500 for electrical wiring, up to $4,000 for upgrading electrical panels, up to $8,000 for an air source heat pump. So you can see that this rebate program covers the cost of appliances, but also necessary upgrades that your home might need to accommodate those appliances, right? So if you were to want to go all electric, your home might need new wiring, new electrical panels, and things like that. And that has been thought of and kind of baked into that program. So like we mentioned, this is for low and moderate income Illinoisans. So the way that is calculated is through something called area media income, or AMI. So If you or your household is at or below 80% AMI, you can claim a rebate for the full price of the appliance up to the limits on the screen. And then if your household is at or below 150% of AMI, you can claim a rebate for half of the cost of the appliance up to the limits on the screen again. So definitely, after this webinar, go and check if you might be eligible. AMI is quite granular. So even if you think based on your county or your zip code that you might not be eligible, you actually might be. So I definitely recommend checking. Again, we don't exactly know what this is going to look like, but we're hoping for late this year or early next year. So in addition to federal and state incentives, there are incentives through utility providers as well. All utilities will give you some sort of incentives for energy efficiency projects. I'm not going to go over every utility in the state, but we're going to go over ComEd, NICOR, and Ameren, just to give you a sense of the kind of numbers and the projects that are eligible for utility incentives. Of course, these are smaller dollars, but they can be stacked. And utilities have their own requirements. So if you're planning on utilizing these incentives, go on the utility website, check what their requirements are. You likely will need to work with a contractor that is trained and vetted through their network. So ComEd has rebates for things like heat pump clothes dryers, induction cooktops, air source, and geothermal heat pumps. I know that, or hopefully for some of you, the goal is to eventually get off of the gas system. But in the meantime, we can still take advantage of the rebates and the coupons that they offer through gas companies. So NICOR offers rebates for air sealing, attic insulation, duct sealing, and wall insulation, which are all things that you might be interested in for your home energy efficiency and weatherization upgrades. So Ameren does something similar as well. So they'll give you a coupon for an electric dryer, and then rebates for a heat pump water heater, and then a air source heat pump. And then they offer insulation and air sealing rebates based on the square footage that you're using. Okay, so let's talk next steps. So let's say you're here, you're really excited, you're like, what is next? What do I do? The first piece of advice and recommendation that we always give is to start planning now. Don't wait until your existing system fails. This is not something to be thinking about when you're like, oh shoot, furnace kicked the bucket. This process requires time and planning, and also take into account that contractors will need time to route permitting papers through your municipality. The next step is going to be to weatherize and make your home as efficient as you can. If this isn't really done properly, your bills might go up in a way that you don't feel comfortable with, might really increase your energy burden, which is what we don't want at all. And the next step is to shop around for a heat pump model and a heat pump installer. I also do want to say that if you are excited and interested in getting a heat pump, to be persistent and to not give up. I know the process can be laborious and daunting, and the US has been incredibly slow compared to other countries in terms of heat pump adoption. So this process is kind of new to everybody involved. And we're seeing in the field that contractors have varied levels of understanding and experience with heat pumps. So it might take you a little bit of time to feel or to find a contractor that you feel comfortable working with. I do also have some additional tips specifically for finding an installer. Unfortunately, CUB does not maintain any sort of list or network of contractors, but here are some tips. The first is going to be to check with your local network. Heat pump adapters are out there, like Jim mentioned. Heat pumps are outselling gas furnaces, right? So there's a decent chance you might know someone in your network who has had a heat pump installed recently. I've heard of folks finding success through local Facebook groups, next door groups, and simply asking their friends and family. Another place to start your research is through the heat pump manufacturers, utility providers, or professional alliances. So many manufacturers maintain their own list of contractors that have undergone a certain level of training with them. For example, the Mitsubishi Train rating system, which is a popular manufacturer of cold climate heat pumps, rates their contractors based on the level of training that they've gone through with the manufacturer and the number of installs they've done. So that can be a great place to start. Your utility probably manages a database. That might also be a great place to start. And then another place to look might also be through professional alliances. There are collaboratives and throughout the Midwest. A couple in Illinois are going to be the Geothermal Alliance of Illinois. If you're also thinking about geothermal, maybe the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association. These are places that might maintain their own list that will give you a good place to kind of start your research as well. One final tip is just to be curious and to ask questions. A qualified and professional contractor that is working and excited about heat pumps will take the time to walk through the technology and the process with you. On the screen, we have some questions that we recommend asking your contractor just to make sure that you're comfortable with their professionalism and their experience in doing these types of projects. Okay, I know we covered a lot of information in quite a short period of time, and I want to share with you our new electrification page on CUB's website that has links to literally everything that we've just talked about. So you can find it on our website under resources and then under electrification. You'll find our related fact sheets here. So we have fact sheets about pretty much everything, heat pumps. We have a checklist for you, and then a lot of other resources. And then I also do want to highlight a couple other resources on this page that might be useful. The first is going to be NEEP's, which is Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnership, Cold Climate Air Source Heat Pump. So this is a tool that will allow you to input your home's load info, which if you had a load calculation as part of your home energy audit, you'll have that information. And you can find different cold weather heat pumps that meet your specifications. So this will give you an opportunity to compare different models and get a sense of the manufacturer and the models that you might be interested in. It might also be useful to work backwards, right? So maybe you find you get the sizing right and you know that this is the size and the model and the manufacturer that I want. Then maybe you go through that manufacturer to find a contractor. That is an alternative route to get to the same place that might be useful. Another resource is by a Wisconsin heat pump collaborative called Focus on Energy. So this ebook has a lot of information on planning and technology, but it also has a lot of information about operation and maintenance, which is not something that we see quite often. So if you're thinking about getting a heat pump, this might be a handy resource for you to bookmark in case you run into some operation or maintenance troubles in the future. Again, all of these links are under our electrification page, so you should be able to find them on our website with quite easily. And that brings me to the end of my slides.
Great, Joey, great job. Thank you so much. Now we have a lot of questions. We're also going to do a drawing at the end. We promised we'd give away one $25 gift card. Guess what? We're going to give away two at the end, but there are a lot of questions here. I want to start off, and I appreciate everybody being patient. First of all, I realize nobody can see some of these questions, but Linda just said, thank you for all you do on our behalf. Thank you, Linda. But Randy asked, what is the cost difference between air source heat pumps and geothermal heat pumps?
I would say for an air source heat pump, including install, you are probably looking at $10,000 to $15,000, and probably at least double that, if not more than double that for a geothermal system. So geothermal is going to be a much more expensive option, but you'll have such reduced energy burden afterward. It might be a good investment, but it really is on a case-by-case basis.
But the savings, the long-term savings compared to like a gas system is superior. Correct?
Definitely.
Right. So Conrad asks, are ground source heat pumps a feasible option? This is a good question, Conrad, for existing homes within Chicago city limits, especially on the common property lot sizes where space is limited. In other words, how much space do you need for ground source to be an option?
I will say that folks in Chicago have had a hard time getting geothermal, or I hear from folks who have been in Chicago who have been having a hard time. And it comes down to a couple of factors. One is going to be that for our more narrower lots, you're going to need a similarly narrow drill rig to dig those boreholes. And those are not as widely found in this area yet. We're hoping that that will change in the upcoming years. So that's one barrier. Another barrier is that some contractors are hesitant to work in Cook County limits because of the permitting process. It's kind of a little messy, so that might be another hurdle. And then the third, which actually is something that CUB is working on, is that there has to be a certain amount of distance between other power lines and other infrastructure that may be in the ground. And the way that those kinds of regulations in the state were built in were extremely, I would say, overly cautious. So we're working on kind of structuring those requirements based on the information and the knowledge that we have now. I will say that in a Chicago, if you are in a tight Chicago lot, I'm not sure how feasible that might be. This is definitely more a question for a contractor. I mean, you can send them some pictures and they'll give you a sense of if this is feasible or not.
It's a really good question. I think there is there are a lot of people already starting to tackle these questions of what would you do in an urban situation. Like I know there's a pilot project that's just in the opening stages in Chicago where there would be a geothermal system. Several homes would share in that, I believe. But these are all challenges, to trying to figure out how to do this, how to make all the puzzle pieces fit together. A lot of questions here. Emma says, and thank you for being so patient, Emma. I live in a multi-unit building, a nonprofit limited equity co-op. So we have no individual building owners. Does that mean we cannot take advantage of tax credits or rebates?
So if you so we have no individual building owner. So does that mean that the nonprofit is the building owner? I guess we don't know the answer to that.
Yes. Emma says yes.
Okay. I mean, you definitely can, but unless you plan on taking that technology with you, if you were to move, right, you're investing into the property that you're currently living in. So you can definitely go ahead and take advantage of them if you're really interested. For example, if you just wanted a single induction boilerplate, you can get like a singular one instead of getting like a whole stovetop. If you wanted to take advantage of those incentives, you definitely can do that. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you, Joey. And she says, I guess I'm asking about heat pumps for the whole building.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess my follow-up question would be,
we can have Emma, if you want Emma to reach out to me, would you like that?
Yes, that'd be great.
Emma, you have it's jchilson@citizensutilityboard.org. Okay, great. She will reach out. Thank you, Emma. I appreciate it. Okay, let me go through. What is the difference between, this is Joseph, what is the difference between a mini split and a heat pump? I believe that the mini split would qualify for 30%, but not the large amounts that air and ground source heat pumps get.
Mini splits are, I believe that the main difference in mini splits is that they're going to be ductless systems. So you would be installing into an individual room or kind of like zones that you have inside of your house. And then you would have an outside unit and an indoor unit. So if you, I know that mini splits are more common in parts of Europe or Asia. So you might have seen them there. It's when the system is bolted into, kind of like sits on the top of your wall, I guess. Does that make sense? So it's like a wall mounted unit. And then you would be able to have control over certain rooms and certain zones.
Okay, thank you. Bruce Storer, you were asking, what is the breakdown of sources of utility delivered electricity in Illinois and Cook County? What percent is solar, coal, natural gas, and wind? I'm working on that answer for you, Bruce. I do hear it, but I want to go to well, I'll get the answer while Joey's answering some of these other things. So Linda said, unfortunately, we just replaced our furnace after an unanticipated demise of a 90% efficiency furnace. Our replacement is a Lennox 97% efficiency furnace. Does the efficiency rating of the furnace help reduce our carbon output?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. Do you know, Jim?
I I don't know. That is a great question.
Yeah.
So I would think that the more efficient it is, the better carbon. I mean,
Right. That would make sense to me, but I'm not
so
100% sure.
Linda, I got that. We reach out to me. I can get you an answer for that tomorrow. No problem. Let me see here. We got a couple more. Um, see, I'm just going through some of these comments. James points out that the tax credits can be carried over into other years if your income isn't high enough. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, there you go. Thank you, James. Let's see. I'm just going through these. I'm just going through all these. Sorry, just making sure. Lawrence asks, I got a new furnace and an AC, which is 80% efficient, and my AC has a 13 SEER. Um, some of it was paid for through a DuPage County program. He's wondering if he can still get a tax credit. Lawrence, we've talked before. If you want to reach out to me tomorrow, I can try to get an answer for you on that. Lawrence also says, I have an electric stove that works pretty well. I have a condo. Would the heat pump work for me in a condo, Joey?
Yes, I think the only complication would be, are you just transitioning or is the whole building transitioning? A lot of existing condo buildings are actually already all electric, so we definitely know that that is possible. That transition obviously involves more people or might involve an HOA, so there are other kind of factors that may change your decision making.
So Lawrence points out, if everybody gets these heat pumps and we save energy, then ComEd will probably want more rate hikes because they're making less money. You bring up a good point that we're always going to have to be challenging the utility, reining in the utility. You know, there's always going to be that challenge of making sure we hold these utilities accountable. I just want to point out that I put in the chat our statewide better heat guide. That is for a statewide audience. If you live outside Chicago, right underneath that, I put in the order form. These are all free guides that we offer. I put in the order form for the Chicago Better Heat Guide. So there's a Chicago focus Better Heat Guide and then a statewide Better Heat Guide. Linda asks, are there incentives for new home construction to install these decarbonizing types of units?
Yes, so some of these, I also see a comment that is a great point that neither Jim or I are CPAs or tax experts. So if you are planning on taking advantage of these tax credits, definitely go to your CPA. We'll do our best to answer your questions, but they are going to be the experts here, right? I completely forgot the question in the meantime. Jim, could you repeat it for me?
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me just go. Sorry. Are there incentives for new home construction to install this decarbonizing types of units?
Yes, so it depends on the tax credit or the rebate, but a lot of them are eligible for new construction, and trying to make our new buildings more efficient and electrified is something that we are working on as well.
Are ground source heat pumps a feasible option? Oh, I think I've already asked that, Conrad. Thank you. That was a good question about Chicago. Let's see. James says geothermal would also be helpful in home resale value, I would imagine, and that is true, that a good efficient system like geothermal or an air source heat pump could help with the resale value. Linda says we've always been told that gas is a clean energy. Is that a myth? You want to handle that one, Joey?
Definitely a myth that the gas industry has been working very hard to tell us, just in the way that they phrase natural gas, right? But we know that we see all those emissions. We see really toxic chemicals like benzene coming from our natural gas lines.
Thank you. What is the relationship between a furnace and a heat pump? Does a heat pump replace a furnace or work with it? Good question.
So it has the capacity to replace your furnace. Some folks don't really feel comfortable with that option, and you can opt for something called a dual fuel system. So that would mean that you would probably get a lower efficiency heat pump. So it would tackle the heating and the cooling and the heating on milder days. And then when it gets really, really cold, your furnace would kick in. I have definitely talked to folks who have had success with those systems as well. So that's an option.
Then we have a question in the, and that is a great point by Sanford. Yes, always need to check with the IRS or CPA. Very good point. Then somebody said, are there any energy reduction benefits to on-demand water heaters compared to traditional water heaters or heat pump water heaters?
I'm not sure about the on-demand water heaters. I have heard a little bit of like buzz around it, but I'm not super sure. I will say that a heat pump water heater is going to be much more efficient than the gas version that you have. I don't want to speak incorrectly, but I think it's like 2 to 3 times more efficient.
Thank you. Are the induction stoves for both the stovetop and the oven? Linda asks.
Because the rebate program is not set in stone yet, we don't exactly know. I know folks have so many questions around the appliance rebates, but lots of questions, no answers yet. Hopefully we will get some clarity on them soon.
Yeah. Hold on. Just I think we're all good with the Q&A, although I still have to get still have to answer the question about the breakdown of the sources. I've heard that Gene says, I've heard that heat pumps struggle below 20 degrees. This is a good question. To keep a home warm, would an air source heat or ground source heat pump handle the job better? I keep hearing some are keeping a gas furnace as a backup. The Washington Post recently had an article speaking to the problem of getting electricity going forward because of the heavy demand by data centers that is growing every day. This, along with people converting to electric, makes one wonder if utilities can keep up. I will say that ComEd says it can keep up, that it's prepared, that it's constantly studying this. Not only do we have to look at it in terms of demand, but also in terms of, reducing demand through energy efficiency and a demand response, all these types of programs, battery storage, things like that. Would you add anything to that, Joey? Basically, no. The question is the grid ready?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of work to be done, like Jim said, in terms of reducing the amount of energy that we're using to begin with, and also in terms of transmission and grid reliability. These are all things that we're thinking about, things that the governing body of the utilities is thinking about, and they've asked them to come up, show us your plan for how you're going to meet this growing demand. And I believe ComEd just put, I forgot the number, but said today it could handle X number of heat pumps if they were installed today. And it was a very, very large number. But definitely is something that we're working to make sure that we hold ComEd accountable, make sure that we are prepared for this transition and things like that.
And the question about 20 below, sorry.
Oh, right. That is definitely, if you are looking at an older heat pump or a lower efficiency heat pump, that is the truth. This technology, like we've talked about, has come such a long way. Our cold climate heat pumps can guaranteed function. I think it's like, do you remember the exact number? I think it's -13. Some of the hyperheat ones are incredibly efficient and incredibly good in cold temperatures. So I think the 20 degree metric is a little bit dated. But they will lose efficiency as it gets colder, but still can guarantee operation.
And you brought this up before, Joey. It's really important to have a cold weather heat pump to make sure you're getting the right heat pump for the climate, correct?
Right, exactly. You don't want to end up with a regular heat pump in our Chicago or Illinois weather.
And in a place like Norway, which is very, very cold, Norway has like I think it's like is it 60% of the homes have heat pumps?
Yeah, like widespread adoption.
Yeah, in Norway and other places like that. So the my understanding is by talking with smart people like Joey is that the technology has gotten better in leaps and bounds over the past decade. So got a question here. Is a ductless system more efficient because it eliminates resistance from ductwork? That's a good question.
To be honest, I'm not sure about the efficiency differences between ducted and ductless systems. I'm not sure.
And
Great
this goes
questions
without
for me to
saying,
look into.
I have said this a million times today, but you can email Jim Chilson, jchilson at citizensutilityboard.org. I put it in the chat. I'll do my best to get the answers that you need. And Gene says, I believe the technology may be out there. It's just, are they here in Chicago? The heat pumps, cold weather heat pumps are available.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I talk to people who have had them installed in their homes, so I know it's possible, and I know that they're out there. I think maybe what you're referring to is like the challenge that you might run into finding someone to install that technology. But like I said, I think it's really important to be persistent. Finding qualified and professional contractors is probably going to be like a really big part of your effort in getting this type of system installed.
And Yvonne said he might be referring to a mini split ductless system. I'll anyway, if I appreciate everybody's patience. It's hard to sometimes, as people are asking all these questions, this is great. If anybody did not get an answer to their question, please, you can send it to me. We tape this. We're going to be sending it out to all of you in the next couple of days. We'll send you this recording. And again, you can reach out to Jim Chilson, jchilson at citizensutilityboard.org. Bruce, I've got your name and I will email you. I'm having a hard time finding it on ComEd's website, but I will get the sources of electricity. I found a list, but it was from 2021 that was a little bit dated. So maybe Yvonne, can you? It's time to pick. We're running short on time, and we really appreciate all the questions. They were great. Again, you can reach out to me. But Yvonne said she can. She's got this fancy way of picking the winner for the card. So this has everybody's name who's been part of the talk tonight.
Yes.
Okay. And do you stop the wheel?
I'm gonna click to spin it. So I'm gonna do that right now.
This is exciting.
Lawrence.
Lawrence,
So
congratulations.
2 of them, right?
We're going to do 2 of them. Congratulations, Lawrence Blasek. We'll get you a $25 gift card.
Okay, here we go again.
James says Vanna White. Yvonne White.
Peter.
And Peter DeYoung. I'm going to write this down. Congratulations, Peter. And Joey, you just put something in the chat. What was that?
It's the environmental disclosure from ComEd.
Great.
So that will give you the numbers.
Yes, and just to let you know, so as of December 31st, 2023, wind power was 4%, solar power 1%, nuclear power 34%, natural gas fired power 44%, hydro 1%, coal fired 15%, and other resources 1%. So what I get from that is we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. There was one more comment before we say goodnight. The U.S. has a national renewable lab. This is Mark. in Golden, Colorado. There's SEAM's study on the national energy grid modernization has huge benefits. I think it's also part of the IRA.
Oh, I'm gonna look that up right now.
Thank you very much. You've excited. CUB is full of nerds and good nerds. I mean that as a compliment. Intellectual, smart people who want to share information. So thank you. You made them very excited. So Linda, this is a good way to end. She says, one step at a time, that's the only way to get jobs done. And that is absolutely true. So just once again, I just want to say, Joey, did you have anything else to say? And I want to thank Joey Lee. Great job, Joey. It's so great to work with you. Yvonne, thank you for taking time out of your family to do this event and do the tech in the background. And I just want to thank all of you for all your great questions. And we just really appreciate all of you and your support. And thank you. There'll be 3 more of these this year. And we'd love if you have any suggestions on what type of things we should do, what type of issues we should cover. We'd love to hear it. So once again, thank you so much for your support. Have a great night.